Thank you very much, Chair. And it's a pleasure to be here today and for us to sponsor a table at this very important event. What I was going to do today was talk about where we are with respect to pesticide resistance management, but more in terms of an academic standing, how the research is changing, underpinning research, pesticide resistance management. Important plug for the school, we are 125 years old today, and so one of the important things about agricultural research is how it changes over the years. And with respect to pesticide resistance, we're seeing something that is really challenging our whole way of thinking about crop protection going forward. The reasons for for pesticide resistance are many. Limited rotations, cultural practices, a high dependence on chemical control, reduction in the chemicals we have available to us, largely driven by changes in regulatory pressures, and few new modes of action coming through to the level at which they're being commercialized. So new modes of action still being discovered but not turned into useful products. What I'm going to talk about in these next few minutes is not the whole of pesticide resistance. It's too big a topic to cover in a short space of time. I am going to talk about one very specific and very damaging type of pesticide resistance that we see emerging towards herbicides, and it's what underpins a lot of the herbicide resistance issues we have in blackgrass. It's called non-target site herbicide resistance. It's all based around accelerated detoxification of herbicides, and it gives rise to resistance to all classes of post-emergent compound. It was first recorded in a field in Essex in 1982 near the village of Peldon, and now affects pretty much the whole of the UK. Wherever we find blackgrass, the blackgrass will be at some point on its journey in terms of taking on non-target site resistance. And that's affecting over 1.2 million hectares of our best growing land, and last year it was calculated that this cost winter wheat production in the UK about £500 million of productivity. And this, of course, is what blackgrass looks like infesting a field. This is actually in North Oxfordshire. I think one of the impressive things about this to people who are not from the sector, not farmers, they can see this out of their train or car windows, and they can see there's obviously something very wrong with the land when a field of wheat is infested with this dark, ominous-looking weed. Now, one of the reasons I suspect that herbicide resistance has continued apace for the last 30 years is that on the public sector side, there's been remarkably little activity to join up all of the various practices that we know that we could counteract this type of problem getting worse. And so in 2014, the then chief scientist, Sir John Bennington, got a group of agronomists, agriculturalists, researchers together and asked us to come up with some recommendations for a national crop protection strategy, something that they could then help to fund. And that's one of the instigators actually for the agri-tech centres as they're now being established here in the UK. They came up with a number of recommendations. I don't intend to go through all of them, but the one I do want to go through today is the way in which we need to change the way that we're doing research. If you look at the way that medicine is dealing with many of its issues, a lot of it is this idea of fast-tracking innovation from the people doing the work at the bench, but also from the practitioners feeding back their information back to the scientists. And it's that interplay and then that rapid development which is what we need now to counteract major issues like pesticide resistance. So we have to do this in a completely different way to the way it was being done back in the 1970s when we had large public bodies like the Weed Research Organisation coordinating national activities in weed control. We now find ourselves with a much more fragmented landscape and one which is changing at an almost bewildering pace. These are just some of the organisations starting off at universities and ending up with industry that I'm going to be putting in the next few slides to illustrate how we're changing our way of working in the university sector to work with other public sector bodies, but more importantly with industry to crack some of these major problems. So first of all, within the university sector, we've recognised now that one researcher working on blackgrass resistance is not going to challenge something on the scale which is now happening just in the UK. So instead, we're getting together into consortiums of scientists, and we're changing the way that we work. We're not just doing ivory tower research anymore. We're doing work which is understanding the basic fundamental science behind resistance in blackgrass, but working with the farming sector on a continuous basis as the project is developed. So we don't wait for 4 years and then tell the farmers what we've done. We work with farming groups and basically have meetings with them every 6 months to tell them what progress is being made, and learning from them as to what they're observing out in the field. We formed new alliances between universities and industries so that we can better understand what the industry needs. So rather than carrying out research work and then looking for somebody who's interested in applying it, we now carry out work which is much more translational and directed at end user need than we've ever done before. At Newcastle University, we formed a joint institute with a private company, Fera Science Limited, with all of their interests in agrochemistry and plant health. And finally, we're involved in one of the 4 agri-tech centres that have been established here in the UK. This is the one for crop health and protection. This is an attempt to bring back together some of the fragmented skills that exist both in the private and public sector to give coordinated and integrated solutions and speak with one voice about crop health and protection in a very changed world. What we're doing at Newcastle is to take the science out into the field. We've had 4 trailers designed as mobile laboratories, and the idea of these trailers is to take them out into the field and study herbicide resistance out there, utilising the latest technologies. And one of the things we're very interested in doing here is providing the farming sector with diagnostic tools that will give information about classes and types of pesticide resistance mechanisms that you may be observing in real time. So you don't have to send the samples away. We get information back in 10 to 20 minutes. This is the sort of technology we've been able to develop, again, with our colleagues at Fera Science Limited. Now we have assays that will tell us about what types of mechanism of resistance we're seeing towards herbicides in blackgrass, including non-target site resistance. These are based on antibody-based diagnostics, very similar, in fact, to pregnancy testing technology, and they'll give you an answer as to the level and type of non-target site resistance you're seeing in a field of blackgrass within 20 minutes of assay test. And importantly, as we're starting to unravel the molecular biology and the biochemistry of herbicide resistance in blackgrass, we're starting to see chinks in the armour of the resistance mechanism. So when we're dealing with clinical medicine, when we see resistance to drugs which have cost many millions of pounds to develop, we don't just abandon the drug, we try and break the resistance mechanism. And that is one type of research that we're taking forward now here at Newcastle, identifying chinks in the regulatory systems that regulate pesticide resistance so that we can now restore control by knocking out the resistance mechanism. And finally, just to give you some kind of overview, with the world that we work in now in academia to carry out the sorts of work which will be of interest to the Nuffield Trust is an extremely complex one, but it's one in which we now see renewed interest in both funding from both private and public sectors. Thank you.